Okay, topic 2 of Unit 4, Unit 4 being the progressive era. Now, I'm obligated by New York state law to spend X amount of time on women and their rights, right? That's complete and total sarcasm. We could spend months talking about the women's suffrage movement, right? But it is its own topic, so we will give it its due. We're going to look at some of the major players, a brief little history, and then ultimately how they were given the right to vote. Okay. All right. First, we've got to look at how the role of women is changing at this time. Okay. Colonial period, spreading right up through the westward expansion. Okay. Women's rights are going to, or the role of women, excuse me, is going to consistently change. All right. And that depends on, a couple things. Geography comes into play. The changing dynamics of society. But at this time, women become a little bit more active. They're not necessarily home taking care of the children anymore. Now more women are getting out in the workplace. They're getting an education. More jobs are available for women, right? So they're just, they're taking on more of a responsibility, and they feel that with that responsibility should come a little bit, some more rights, some equal rights of men. Okay, so the women that take part in this movement, they're all college educated, right? Many of them don't have children of their own, so they have the time and energy to be able to devote to the women's suffrage movement, right? So now when I say the word suffrage, it sounds like a terrible word. So if we say, we think that, women should have suffrage, well, suffrage sounds an awful lot like suffer. That doesn't, if you look at the word here, right? I don't know if I want women to have suffrage or not. Well, it's weird because it actually is a good thing, right? So suffrage means the right to vote. So male suffrage would be the right to vote for men. Women's suffrage would be the right to vote for women. Universal suffrage would be the right to vote for the universe. I guess a joke, right? That would be the right to vote for everybody, regardless. All right. So this was the number one goal here. All right, was to get suffrage for all women, right? And then if they had the right to vote, that would give them an equal platform, right, to be seen as equals with men. All right. Here was their strategy. All right. They looked at 3 different approaches. Okay. All 3 of them are, the last one ultimately is successful, right? They start by trying to get the law passed at the state level. Right? Yeah, you have a federal law. You also have state laws. So they thought it'd be easy if they just went state by state by state. We're going to look at a map, to kind of show you how successful they were. They're going to be a little bit more successful out west, not as successful in the big cities in the east. So first one was to get a state law, right? Second one was a federal law. They were going to try and test the 14th Amendment, meaning they went to vote. If you remember, banned citizen vote to help us remember the Reconstruction Amendments. Right? That meant that all citizens had equal rights. So some women tried to vote because they said they were citizens. That's one of their rights. And they were actually arrested and thrown in jail. Right? And then the last one, push for a national law. All right? A constitutional amendment added to, an amendment added to the Constitution that would give them the right to vote. And that's the one that they're ultimately successful doing. Right? So this is going to be, a long, drawn-out affair. All right? So here's the map I was telling you about. All right, it's showing you, women's suffrage before the 19th Amendment, which is the amendment that actually gives them the right to vote. If you look at the key, you have 3 different colors. You have a dark shade, a medium shade, and a light shade. Okay, there are some patterns that are very, very visible here. For instance, the dark shade, which is giving women the right to vote. Right, most of the dark states are out here in the West. Right, meaning, they were the first states to allow women to have a full, the right to vote. That's because life was a whole lot different in the West than it was in the East, as we looked at in Unit 2. Right? Women had more responsibility. They played more of an active role out in the West before they did here in the East. And then it starts to turn from dark shade to white as you come further closer to the East. And then New York is pretty much kind of stands alone here, and you're going to see why. Right? The women's suffrage movement begins in Seneca Falls, New York, and that's why New York was one of the first states to do it. All right, and this event was important because it was the first major step towards women's rights. It's like the first public meeting, the first public outcry for women to have equal rights, and it led to the drafting of the Declaration of Sentiments. All right, which was simply just a document where they were announcing, it's kind of like the Declaration of Independence, they were announcing their desire to have equal rights. So down here in the bottom, right, you should be able to kind of see it. Sorry, the smartboard thing's in the way. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. Right, so they kind of played off of the Declaration of Independence a little bit, but the idea is that it was the first time in history there was a public mention of women's rights. Okay, here are some of the leaders. All right, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, she's a biggie. She's one of the pioneers, the founders at the beginning. All right, Susan B. Anthony, she's another famous one as well. She formed the NWSA, right, which was the first kind of loosely knit organization pushing for women's rights. All right, Carrie Chapman Catt, and I'll get all four of them back up for you so you can copy them down for your workpack question. All right, and last one was Alice Paul, famous movie about her, Iron Jaw Angels. Yeah, I think that's it. Anyway, we've talked about it in class. All right, so here are all four of them again. Okay, pause it, copy their four names down. Okay, you will need to, excuse me, you will at least need to know the first two. Okay, and then here's the last part, the 19th Amendment. This is the one that actually gets them the right to vote. So if you remember, the Seneca Falls Convention was in the 1840s. Okay, now we're in 1920. Right, that's almost 80 years that women were trying to get the right to vote, and they're successful with the passage of the 19th Amendment. All right. If you think about it, when we did ban citizen vote, the 15th Amendment said you couldn't deny someone the right to vote based on a whole bunch of different qualifications or a bunch of different categories. The only category that was missing was gender, right? So this amendment specifically says, based on sex, based on gender, you can't deny them the right to vote.